Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the bar room with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com. Get an in-depth preview of the Chicago Bears' next opponent and John Buffone's passionate rants on Buffone 55 Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gabriel.
That was good.
Greg Gabriel talks.
What have you had to drink so far today?
3 cups of coffee. That's it. Greg, we are not going to laugh that much on this show, but given the state of the news of the Chicago Bears, not only were they humiliated in Tampa Bay, or maybe it's better to say they humiliated themselves, but also there's a pandemic that's hit Halas Hall, and Matt Nagy, when he met the media today, he did it from his car because he's not allowed in Halas Hall. So things are about as
well,
bad.
He was in Halas Hall this morning. He got thrown out of Halas Hall, basically.
Exactly right.
He got tested, one of the instantaneous tests, and then they sent him home.
Yeah, it is a sad time for the Bears.
Now, here's what I don't get. I mean, he had COVID before, so this is the second time.
Yeah, right.
He had COVID back during OTAs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can have it and then get it again. You won't probably get sick as a result of
He was. I don't know if he was vaccinated when he had it the first time, but I know he's vaccinated now.
Yeah.
And I know the protocol is that once you're vaccinated, you've got to, 2 days in a row, test clean, and then you're good to come back to work.
Yeah, so hopefully he'll be back on Wednesday or Thursday. And I say hopefully a lot of fans in the chat room are probably going to throw rocks at me because they've had it.
I would say the earliest is Thursday. I mean, yeah, you'd have to Tuesday and Wednesday test clean, and then Thursday he could come in, but it might be longer. I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
we're throwing darts at the wall.
Right. Well, we know this is that he's lost Bears fans. When you look at, like today at his press conference, I was reading those comments like you did last week, and Bears fans have just had it with Matt Nagy.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that that's just a few, but I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And I didn't listen to the presser after the game. Mm-hmm. Directly after the game, but from what I've read, that didn't go well. And some people like Mark Potash, for one, kind of questioned him about it today.
Yep.
And I'll be honest. First of all, I hate talking about, because I was in the business so long.
Yeah.
I've been around guys that are on the chopping block. And I just don't even like to talk about it. I don't think it's fair. That's, people up higher on the totem pole are the people that make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't like, and I get it comes with the territory, but is that Nagy can handle everybody saying he sucks and he's not a good coach. He's got to get fired. He knows that's when you lose, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay. But he's got little kids.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a wife. His coaching staff's got families. They got to read that stuff. They got to hear that stuff. They got to see that stuff on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I know when Bobby, when I was working for the Bears and Bobby DePaul got let go in January of 2010, there was some speculation that, I might be next. And there's stuff in the papers, there's stuff on the radios. And it didn't bother me because I knew exactly what my status was, but it bothered my wife. It bothered, because she worked in retail. She had people coming up to her all the time. What's going on with your husband? Yada, yada,
Mm-hmm.
And,
Sure.
and that's the part
Yeah.
I'm never going to get into because they're not part of it.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, in every business where I've worked, and I've been a staff director responsible for dozens of people, and so when you're having personnel performance issues, I'm not going to go around and talk about it openly. Those are private discussions, and I totally respect the fact that you worked in personnel departments for dozens and dozens of years, that this is a really tough subject and fans can be mean. And, yesterday during one of our shows, I threw one of my temper tantrums, blaming Pace and Nagy for everyone. But at the same time, I'm sensitive to the fact that these people do have families, that they are human beings, and that we should be careful about our vitriol and how much we throw on these people, even if they are arguably incompetent.
I just, like I say, I don't feel bad for those people, the people involved.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad for like the kids. Nagy's got kids that are like in grade school. I don't know if he's got anybody in high school yet, but I know he's got kids in grade school.
Right.
And I know that his kids and Chris Ballard's kids, who we, mention every once in a while, were really close when they worked together in Kansas City. And they still, Chris will bring his kids up here from Indianapolis and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And, having to go to, how'd you like to be like a seventh grade boy?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to go to school with all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. That's tough on those kids.
Absolutely.
So that's why I don't like it. But still, in saying that, I got to be fair. Yesterday's the first time I thought there could be a change made. I never thought it until yesterday. And I just think that, they didn't perform. We could sit here for an hour and talk about, well, why? The offense wasn't there. And Todd Bowles. So what's the last thing I said last week? It's going to be ugly.
Yeah, you did.
You can find the tape. That's the last sentence. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
And part of it was because of what happened last year. Not a doubt in my mind. This was payback's a bitch.
Yeah. I mean, they were
Brady got questioned about that game.
Yeah.
He was embarrassed about that game because he lost his composure.
Mm-hmm.
And this was payback time.
Right. They were up 35-3 and trying to score inside the 5-yard line on 4th down. So,
I know. No. If he could have scored 50, he would have.
Yeah, he would have.
And laughed about it.
That's right.
So, and you know what? You're going to get games like that. But here's the key. And I thought about this, leading up to recording this, is that the last time they got their ass whooped at Cleveland, they came back pretty strong the next week against Cincinnati. So to me, if there's any life left, they got to show it next week against San Francisco. And if they don't, then there's people are in trouble. They've played well at home so far. So, I think that's going to be the case is they got to come back and play hard and win next week. And not just play hard. They got to come back and win next week.
Right.
And San Francisco, they've only won 2 games.
Exactly. Yeah, they're a team in turmoil too. And here's the schedule and what it looks like. So it's San Francisco in week 8. It's the nationally televised game against the Steelers in week 9. If the Bears do lose those 2 games, now the Bears have never fired a head coach during the season in their history, over 100 years. Might that change, Greg?
I don't know. That's going to be George McCaskey and Ted Phillips. That's not even going to be Ryan Pace's call. That's George and Ted. And Virginia's going to have a say in that too. They might say, "Hey, you know what? Let's do this now so we can get a head start on who the next guy is." Now I know who I'd want, but
Ooh, tell us.
That doesn't mean I'd want Brian. I'd want Brian DeBall in a minute and a half.
Yeah, I was going to say, does he work for Buffalo?
Here's the thing I hear, and he was interviewed a bunch last year, didn't get hired.
Right.
Of course, he kicks everybody's rear end every week with his offense. But I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that he's not a good interview. So what?
Right.
Can you coach football?
That was the a complaint on Vic Fangio, that he would interview for jobs. He was just not a good interview.
Well, what's he supposed to do? He's supposed to coach football, not impress with his corporate speak with the powers that be. Whoever that's supposedly that's one of the reasons Bruce Arians didn't get the job over Trustman.
Right.
Okay. Well, what happened?
They actually had both of them do a mock press conference to see how they would fare with the media, which is an indication of how a lot of owners see their team. They want to present a good front first, and then second, are they a good football coach? Now, I'm simplifying that to a degree. I don't think that's absolutely 100% true.
Well, I know this. I know this to be fact that Phil Emery had Rod Marinelli, who was still on the staff, interview both. Rod said, hands down, Bruce Arians. Now, this is fact. And the only know why Marinelli left then? Because Arians wasn't hired.
Right. Yeah, I think you had told me that before. I'd heard that too, and it's it's so disrespectful. Talk to this guy, and then you come back and say, hands down, it should be this guy, and then you say, okay, thanks for your opinion, bye.
Phil was going to outsmart everybody.
Yeah,
the only person he outsmarted was himself.
Yes, he did. Do you care to talk about that story that when you met Phil?
No. After he got fired? No.
Yeah, we got to get together and write this book on your life. You've got so many incredible stories, and we'll get to some.
And they're not all related to the NFL either. I just told you too.
Yes. What do you think about Chubbs' comment here? He's basically saying that the Bears laid down against the Bucs. Do you agree with that the team laid down after being so-called owned by Aaron Rodgers?
No, I'll tell you, they didn't play good, but I don't think they laid down. And the reason I say that is that goal line stand. That was pure pride. The defense was still playing hard. They were getting beaten, but they were playing hard. And if they weren't playing hard, Tampa Bay would have walked in there in that situation. They held them 3 downs inside the 5-yard line and just stopped it. So that part told me a little bit that he hadn't lost the team, but it's just not going in the right direction. there's too much of this.
Yeah.
You want this.
Right. Now, I contend that the reason they lost is because they lost at the line of scrimmage, particularly the offensive line. In my philosophy, I grew up basically a pupil of Jim Finks's style of leading a team. And he always said, you start building a team at the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And the Bears just simply don't have the horses to compete against a terrific Tampa defense, and so they controlled the line of scrimmage.
Well,
and that was
we got to be fair about one thing now, and that is the guy they drafted to be the left tackle gets hurt,
right?
So now he's out. So you got to bring in Peters, and Peters hasn't played too badly.
I agree.
Okay, then Effetti, he was all right, not all pro, but he was all right. Wilkerson went in, he was all right. But now you got Simmons in yesterday, and he doesn't know he's going to start until Sunday morning when Wilkerson comes down with COVID yesterday. And this guy's never played a game in the National Football League. Okay, he got a ton of snaps during the preseason, which he needed because last year's preseason, we all know that was wiped out, and that was his rookie year. So he's essentially, he's a FCS level player, Tennessee State, who has to play against one of the best defenses in football on his first time he's ever steps on an NFL football field. And guess what? He looked like it.
Right. One of the reasons I went into a manic state yesterday is because I feel like every year there is some deficiency in the roster. Lack of depth here, lack of depth there, a missing piece here on the starting lineup, a missing piece there. And I just feel like Ryan Pace has not done an adequate job to put a team out in the field that could win week to week against good teams because there's been holes. What do you think about my frustration? Any legitimacy to that, or I'm just crazy?
I don't disagree with it, but I think that if you were a fan of another team and you studied that team as much as you find out that every team is the exact same way.
You're right.
There's always a hole. And we started talking about this last week and we never really completed it. But, during the summer, during training camp, they already know what they think they're going to need next year based on contracts, age, all this other thing. We're going to have to, we can't pay this guy anymore. So we're just going to, let A-Rob's gone. He's not going to be here next year. I don't care who the general manager is, who's the coach. He's not going to be here. They can't afford him.
Right.
And, they're going to have to, they might have to pay Montgomery. Khalil Herbert's playing so good that, maybe they decide they get 4 years out of him and then move on, and that happens a lot with running backs.
Yeah.
But you go in thinking, okay, I'm going to need a receiver. I'm going to need another offensive lineman. I'm going to lose this guy. So I got a hole here. And then you're thinking, okay, I can fill it in veteran free agency and I can fill the draft. And you got to have those two things work together. What's the strong points of the draft? What's the strong points of free agency? And then you got to figure out, I don't have a number one. What can I get in the second round? And, can I get, let's just say, just make up a position here. I need a defensive tackle because I don't think Hicks is going to be here next year.
Right.
So, so then they're, you going, okay, can I get a good defensive lineman in the second round? Chances are they're going to be picking in the top third of the second round. So, you look at that versus what's there in free agency. And those decisions are being made in February and March. Right. Because you work one against the other, or that's not the right way to say when I say one against the other, in concert with each other. Like, I'm going to fill this need in free agency and this need in the draft. And hopefully you get lucky, but you only got so many dollars to work with.
Right.
That's why I think some of these guys Hicks has he played a full season in the last 3 years? I don't think so.
No,
he's already missed 2 games. He's already missed 2 games this year. As good as he is he giving? My philosophy is that you got to give back to your team what you're making in a salary. So if you're making $10 million, you got to give them $10 million in production.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, it's out the door.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people now are pointing the finger at Ryan Pace, and Ted Phillips has had a target on his back for.
And Ted Phillips isn't going anywhere. He has nothing to do, and I'll say this: he has nothing to do with the product on the field.
Other than
my office was right across the hall from his. I know, I know exactly what he does.
But other than Ryan Pace.
Well, but he had brought in Ernie Accorsi for that too.
Right. Well, that is his problem too. I mean, Ernie Accorsi.
Well, he did it because he knew he hired Phil Emery, and then he went. Now Ernie's been involved in probably half a dozen GM searches around the league.
Yeah, he's on some committee that does that.
Yes, and that was his recommendation. I know Ernie well. I worked for Ernie for a number of years. Worked with him and for him, and he's he's been right sometimes and he's been wrong sometimes. But we all are, and throw the dart at the wall, hope it sticks.
For sure.
But Ted, tell you why Ted's going to be here. That stadium they're putting up down the street from you.
Greg, I was thinking that same thing when I was taking a shower this morning. There's no way Ted Phillips is leaving.
Who do you think's been doing all this stuff?
Exactly.
You think George has? No way.
No way. That's Ted's project, and there's no way they're going to.
Ted's project before was getting Soldier Field redone.
Yeah.
Within the constraints that they had, because there was a lot of, from my understanding, there was a lot of politics involved in that thing. Do you know why that Soldier Field's never been named anything other than Soldier Field? It's all politics.
Yeah, exactly. And
and you know how much money they could have brought in with naming rights?
Yep. Absolutely. Totally with you. Now, it does seem, though, for a lot of fans that, accepting the fact that Ted Phillips is not going to go away is troublesome. They want new management. I mean, you can even kind of point to the Soldier Field negotiations and say perhaps the Park District has gotten the better of Ted Phillips.
I don't know if I agree with that one, though.
Okay.
How often I used to know a lot of the particulars of the contract, like getting the field resodded and stuff like that. And they got the Park District to up the ante on some of that stuff and get the field resodded more often during the season, because they saw the problem is that because it's resodded so much, the rooting never takes place such a way you really want it to. And it wears down. In fairness, field's been in pretty good shape the last few years.
Yeah, it has been. There's no doubt about it. That's now become a fallacy when people are talking badly about the Soldier Field turf, because that hasn't been a problem in 5 years or so. Yeah,
I remember how bad it was. We played New Orleans in the NFC Championship game in January 2007. Field was in bad shape, but since then, I don't think so. My little guy here is getting a little restless.
Does he want to go out for a walk? You can do the show.
He might want to go outside, but
you can do the show.
He might be telling me. So let me see. Is he laying down? No, he just laid down again. Okay.
There's a question from Chris Watts, who lives all the way on the other side of the planet Earth. Thank you for tuning in, Chris. And he wants to know, what do you think about Justin Fields and how he is being coached and his progression?
He's playing pretty much like I thought he was going to play. And pretty much like, except for Mac Jones, who was, I think, from a standpoint of being able to run a pro-style offense. You ran a pro-style offense at Alabama. He was ahead of the game, but his ups where guys like Lawrence and Fields, Wilson, their upside is here. Or I think Mac Jones is going to be a hell of a quarterback. He's already proven that, but I don't think he's got the upside these other guys do.
I agree. Yeah.
But all those guys are struggling. And Jones, even they mentioned it. Was it last night's game, the Sunday night game, that he's still throwing 7 interceptions and only 7 touchdown passes. So don't try to tell me he's killing everything, but he's playing on a lot better football team than the other guys are.
Greg, I have a theory. Tell me what you think of it. Matt Nagy was forced to start Justin Fields, and that Matt Nagy may have been right that it was a little too early to bring Justin Fields into the starting lineup, given all of the issues around that quarterback position, the injuries to the offensive line, the lack of depth at wide receiver, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that perhaps Matt Nagy was correct all along when he named Andy Dalton the number 1 quarterback, and Justin Fields is just not quite ready to assume that role given what he has around him?
Well, I'm going to tell you a conversation I had last week. I think it was Thursday, might have been Wednesday, with a friend of mine who is an agent. And it's all hearsay. He claims it's true. I'm going to put that disclaimer there right now. I do not know if this is true, but he claims he's close to DiFilippo, and what you say is true.
Well,
that's what was told to me last week. Now, I don't know. Again, people are, prone to bullshit every once in a while. I'm just telling you what I was told.
I've been guilty of bullshitting too. So
no, I mean, hey, I'm passing it on. I'm not going to mention the guy's name.
Sure.
But and I probably shouldn't have mentioned Flip's name, but he, he said that's where it came from.
Right. Earl says, no, we still lose yesterday's game. Maybe, yeah. I think you're right. You probably still lose yesterday's game. I mean, the only one that can beat Tom Brady is Nick Foles, and we're not going back there. That's just a joke.
No, I said last week it was going to be ugly.
You did.
And I just didn't know how ugly.
Right.
And
but it would have been less ugly with Andy Dalton in the lineup. Going on the road to Cleveland and to Tampa Bay are just really difficult tasks for any rookie quarterback. We know that. Now, kudos to him. He had an excellent performance. I should say excellent. He had a good performance in Las Vegas, but there were more Bears fans in the stadium than there were Raiders fans. So
no, there was. And it's also, he was going against a pretty damn good defensive coordinator. Now, Todd Bowles will probably be a head coach next year.
Yes, he deserves another opportunity.
And he didn't deserve to get fired the first time, but that's what it is. But he when you think about it, I mean, he was licking his chops going into yesterday's game. I'm going to throw everything at this guy, and I'm watching. I'm going, oh fuck! He's doing overload blitzes.
Yes,
and you're sending 4 on one side, and you got 2 to block. Yep. And it's like, okay, well. Don't blame it on the line because you can't.
Yep.
A guy, a lineman can't block 2 at a time.
That is right. The very first play, the safety blitz, and Justin Peters.
Right. He had a thing. He has the guy loop around. He's coming free. Most of those times, the guy came free.
Right. It's very, very true. And Bruce Arians said after the game, basically he said, Todd was licking his chops afterwards, prior to the game, because he loves going up against rookie quarterbacks.
He knows he can give him one look and he's doing something totally different.
Yep, indeed.
And you know what? That's why you don't want to play rookies.
Exactly. I mean, you got to at a certain point,
Well, they can learn on the sideline. Okay, and they learn in film study They learn in practice. They learn on the sideline. Now, Justin, a couple weeks ago, showed some promise. He hit some of those deep balls. Last 2 weeks, it hadn't been there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's played two pretty good coordinators the last 2 weeks.
Right. I saw a quarterback in Justin Fields yesterday who was perturbed, for lack of a better way of putting it, by the pass rush. It had gotten to the point where it was affecting him and his throws. He'd have an open guy and overthrow an open guy down the right sideline. I think it was
right. No, it was affecting his accuracy. He's still holding on to the ball too damn long.
Yes.
But I don't know if you saw the tweet. I tweeted out in the second quarter. I think after the second pick, it's time to pull him.
I missed that
pull
one.
him for his good, not for the Bears' good, for his good.
Yeah,
because a game like that, which can get out of control, can do more harm to a young quarterback than good. And I get it. The thing, let him fight through adversity, and maybe that'll happen. You know, God willing, he's going to come back next week and have a strong game. But it's still, you know, that was a tough situation. Personally, I would have yanked him. I would have put in Andy, let Andy finish out the game. The worst case scenario was what I would have pulled him at halftime. But in reality, I would have pulled him in the middle of the second quarter.
Yeah. And our law says quit giving Nagy any benefit of the doubt. And I don't think that's what we're doing here. Well, we are giving him the benefit of the doubt, but we're not endorsing Matt Nagy to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears. We're just kind of analyzing things. And when you analyze things, you got to look at it from all different perspectives. Right. If not, you're going to have a one-sided opinion on things. And so I think that's what we're doing here. Nobody is advocating for Matt Nagy. We're just analyzing Matt Nagy.
That decision's out of our hands. We're not going to, you know what? You can bitch as much as you want. 10 million fans in Chicago can bitch as much as they want. You know what? It's going on deaf ears.
Yeah.
People at 1920 Football Drive in Lake Forest are going to make that decision.
Well, that's an interesting topic right there, because I am of the contention that if there are empty seats at Soldier Field for upcoming,
they're already paid for.
But they're paid for. But the concern is, will then they be paid for in another year? You know, I think John Fox, one of the reasons he was released and didn't serve the last year of his contract is there were considerable empty seats for his last 3 or 4 home games. And, you know, at that point, you got to say, well, we got to stop this. We're bleeding here. We need to come up with something else, because we need asses in those seats so that we can sell jerseys and we can sell beer and we can get the parking.
There's no question about it. And we can pay for that new $2 billion stadium we're trying to build.
Exactly. Oh gosh. So where does this team go from here? Matt Nagy made a point after yesterday's game, and he touched on it in today's press conference about the team sticking together. He believes that this team is closer than ever before, he said yesterday, and he expounded on that today. Do you believe that there is a chance here that this team could potentially start to fragment? You've been in situations with teams yourself and been an eyewitness to teams around you where they've been in this hole. What is your level of concern that the players might stop playing for him?
Okay. Can it happen? Yes. Will it happen? I don't know. And know how I would know one way or the other? I have to be in the building. And I'm not trying to avoid the subject.
No, it's fair.
Because when you're in the building and you're down in the weight room working out, you're seeing the players and you're watching how players practice and their energy level during practice and working out in the weight room. You know, it's a 9 to 5. They get there at 7 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and they're there till 4:30 in the afternoon. Some of them later than that. And, you can see it. And if they don't want to play for somebody, everybody's, what it's like, kind of drowsy. Yeah, I got to go to frickin' work today. Regardless if he's making $15 million. I mean, you see it. And the only way, like in the last couple of years of Trestman, hell, his whole last year, the last half season with John Fox, you saw it on the field.
Mm-hmm.
They did not play. I mean, there's a bunch of games they gave up over 50 points with Foxy.
Yes.
And, when you see that, then okay, the players jump ship. That's why I said, going back to when we started this show, is that to me, the key is next Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
What's the level of play, level of energy, the intensity next Sunday? If it's not there, it's all over.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be an interesting matchup against the 49ers because one of the things that they do well, despite only having 2 wins this season, is that they protect their quarterback. And so the Bears pass rush may not.
Did you watch the game last night?
I only saw portions of it. How did they do?
Well, first of all, it's played in the monsoon, so it might not be
it's hard to judge.
But
that's all right.
They got to him more,
Okay.
and a lot, but weather had a lot to do with it. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was a horrible. I sent Ballard a text. Oh, here, I'll read it to you.
Chris Ballard, of course, is the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts and close friends with Greg Gabriel. I saw some of the fourth quarter. I saw a ball slip out of Garoppolo's hands. One of the worst thrown passes he probably has thrown.
The second quarter, same thing happened to Wentz.
Yeah.
He had a first and goal on the 7 or 5 yard line, and then he's like rolling out to the right. And he's going to throw the ball, and the ball slips out of his hands and gets picked.
Oh my goodness!
So it's just awful. Okay, I said, wow. Don't know if I ever watched a game with such shitty conditions, including the snow game they played in Buffalo. That was played in 4 inches of snow.
Wow.
I said, good road win. Hopefully it keeps going in the right direction for you. He turned back. He goes, thanks, Greg. He said, we have a good team. Not perfect, but good. Long way to go. And I think we'll be in on it. But
he, I don't disagree with him. Boy, that running back they got is a special guy. Jonathan Taylor. I learned yesterday watching bits of the game that he got invited to go play football at Yale. So he's a super smart guy. He runs hard. He's got great instincts. I mean, that's a great. And then, of course, they drafted one of my most favorite college football players of all time, Quentin Nelson, at the left guard position. I was praying that the Bears would get him. So they've got some talent on that team.
Okay, I'll tell you a story now.
Okay.
So I'm, Chris and I talk a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They're going into that draft. They're picking, Colts were 6, I think, right? And
yes.
The Bears were 8.
Correct.
So I'm, we're going back and forth about players, and I want to ask him, what's his? I thought the Bears were going to get Quentin Nelson. Okay, and I asked him about Nelson. Well, he's got a knee, a little bit, And then I said, this is what I mean. Even your friends fucking lie to you. So
that's great.
And then, my asthma's killing me. So then I bring up Roquan. And he goes, oh, God. He goes, you know me, Greg. I got to have those defensive players. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that they were going to take Roquan Smith after I got off the phone with him. And what happens? They take Quentin Nelson and the Bears get. I mean, hey, both of them won.
Yes, they did.
Okay, but I called him up I sent him a text 10 seconds after he made the pick. I go, you.
I love the way you say even your friends lied to you. But the interesting thing, and I've had debates with this with some of my friends, is that in the second round, they come back and get Darius Leonard. And the Bears in the second round, James Daniels. So I say, I've debated people and said the Colts got the better of the deal.
Well, yeah, but they picked before.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So,
So,
I
but
mean,
I was
what are
asked,
you going to do?
I was asked, would you trade
I
those
thought,
two guys?
it could have been the other. It could very easily have been the other way around.
Right. It could have, right, exactly. So
Now,
would
I
you
don't know. I don't know what. I know Chris really liked their guy, the
Darius Leonard?
linebacker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was
and but he didn't run very good, and I think he was hurt, and that was the only thing that was like a red flag to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, Lance Briggs didn't run good either.
Right.
But he played 4.50, and Leonard plays better than 4.50.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that if they timed him again, he'd time a lot faster. That guy's the man. He's a hell of a player.
Mm-hmm.
But really, both teams won.
Yeah,
no doubt. And had the Colts taken Roquan, not a doubt in my mind the Bears would have taken Quentin.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they come back in the second round and get Leonard.
Yeah.
So it could have been a flip-flop.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about this offensive line because, Sam Mustipher is getting criticized for him being overpowered. I keep trying to tell people he has faced 3 of the best nose tackles in the NFL this season, starting with Aaron Donald and then going on to the kid from the Green Bay Packers. And then Vita Vea, I mean, that's
well, Vita Vea is like going up against a Caterpillar bulldozer.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I don't care who you aren't winning.
Exactly.
You hope to win half the plays.
Exactly.
In fact, when I started playing college football, for my very first team meeting in college, coach says, all I want you to do is win 51% of the plays. If you win 51% of the plays, we win the game.
Interesting. I'm surprised it's that low. I would have thought maybe 75%.
I think he's trying to just make a point.
Yeah,
we know you're not going to win every play.
Yep.
But that guy, he's a bulldog, and he's a tough guy to block.
Yeah, indeed. Then the 2 guards, you got James Daniels at the right. You got Cody Whitehair at the left guard. Now, Cody Whitehair has a potential out in his contract. So if the Bears wanted to save some money, Cody Whitehair could be playing his last season for the Chicago Bears, but he does bring a lot of value to this team. His veteran leadership, having cohesion in the team. So I would love to see those 3 guys continue to be the middle of the offensive line for the next several years. Your thoughts?
I don't disagree with you. What I'd like to see, they don't tell you about the guys on IR.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I look at it, Borum is, he had a sprained MCL. He's got to be getting there ready to play. Okay, so is it going to be this week? Or are they going to wait till after the bye? Or whatever, because, your first indication if he's getting ready to play is he's going to, they can bring him up and put him on designated to return for practice. So if he's practicing, then that they're bringing him back. But right now he's not practicing. And then really the same thing with Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nobody said he's out for the season. And even if they do get him up and running and he's back to practice, they can do 2 things. They can let him practice for 3 weeks and then have him do some stuff there just to get some football in.
Yeah.
And get reps in and then put them back down.
Right.
Or they can, you got 3 weeks to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you play them? If the season's shot, yeah.
Yeah. He needs rest.
If he's ready.
Mm-hmm.
If he's healthy and he's ready.
Right.
Because that's going to help your team next year.
Right. Now,
because that is your line. Those 5 guys, that's your line next year, in my opinion.
You would think, right? The concerning thing regarding those guys is on the IR is Larry Borum. He should have been practicing by now, but apparently there's
you don't know. I mean, a sprained MCL can be like a 5-week injury.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when did he do it? Game 2?
Yes, game 2.
Okay, well, he's right in that window right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm thinking, okay, so if you start seeing that he's put on designated return, begins practicing and designated for return this week,
Mm-hmm.
then they feel he's ready.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the media usually asks about injuries on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Because of the cluster,
Yep.
of today's media. I don't think they even got to injuries.
They did not. Yeah.
Excuse me.
All right. So what about at the tight end position? Are you seeing enough from Cole Kmet to say I'm satisfied that he can be our number 1 tight end for the next several years?
Yeah. I personally like it. He had a drop, and I started to make notes, but then when the game flew out of hand, I said, screw this. In fact, I turned it off more often than not and went to the NASCAR playoff race.
Good for you.
And then would switch back and forth. But yeah, I didn't like that drop.
Mm-hmm.
He really doesn't have that drop. He doesn't have the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And is the opportunities his fault? Not really.
No, it's not.
He's not throwing the ball.
Right. He's been asked.
I'll tell you, he's a son of a bitch to bring down now.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that yesterday. You get him going. I mean, he's not going to make anybody miss,
mm-hmm.
but he'll run over you.
Yep. And I try to tell people one of the reasons he's not catching a lot of passes is because he's being asked to block a lot more because of the state of the offensive line and particularly those tackles. They need help. And so Cole Kmet is usually when he goes out on pattern, he's throwing a block first and then he'll be that safety valve out in the flat.
Right. And you got to look at this. What they're trying to do is, I'll use Bill Parcells' term here, shorten the game. And remember, one of the big concerns going into the season, they don't ever run a game. They can't run the football.
Yeah.
Well, they're running the game,
yeah.
running the ball really well. You can't take that away from them.
Mm-hmm.
You got a rookie 5th round, 6th round pick
mm-hmm.
who, I liked him, who many people, he's not going to play. So he's run for 200 yards in the last 2 weeks.
He looks like a stud. Yes.
And the guy's a hell of a player.
He is.
And what he is he's a better receiver than I gave him credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Watching the tape from Virginia Tech when he was coming out, but he's a good player. And so Damian Williams is going to get back into the flow. He's coming off COVID. His conditioning, probably wasn't where it should be. And he got a few snaps. And then you're going to get Montgomery back. Same thing. He had an MCL.
Mm-hmm.
He might be 3 more weeks away.
Yep.
But you're going to get that back, but you're trying to run the ball to control the clock, get some sustained drives, and then when you can run the ball effectively, your play action pass game works better.
Yeah.
But when you're behind 21-3 or 21-0, whatever, play action isn't worth a damn.
Yeah. You're not going to fool anybody then.
Right.
Chris Watts wants your opinion on the play of the defensive backs. DeAndre Houston Carson.
Very good.
Yeah, but DeAndre Houston Carson is looking like he deserves starter reps.
Well, he's getting a lot of play time. You got to look at the way they got he might not be quote a starter, but he's getting as much play time as those guys are.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the snap count.
He's part of the sub package.
Yes.
No, he's guy, another FCS level kid who's really starting to come into his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and a physical football player.
Right. There are a lot of times where players, they don't start to really develop into the player they can be until they're in their mid to late 20s, right? Is that fair assessment?
Well, yeah, but you gotta, theoretically, you want to be able to make a decision before the rookie contract's up.
Right.
It doesn't always happen. Depends on circumstances, the situations, because then you got to make that decision. Do I pay him or not pay him? Well, they really, when you look at Houston Carson, he's already been out of his rookie contract, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so, but it's not like they had to pay him a whole lot because there wasn't, other than special teams, there wasn't a whole lot to show.
Right.
But now he's showing more.
Yes.
And I'm not sure. I think he's on a 1-year deal, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
I can confirm that is a 1-year deal for $1.127 million. So he's going to be
He's going to make some money. He's going to make some money next. I mean, he's not going to make $8 million a year,
right?
But he's going to get some money next year.
Yeah.
Now do you keep him? And Deshaun Gibson is on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you ship him out? These are things you gotta, you're doing during the off season when you got to make these money decisions. Like I said, I don't think A-Rob's going to be here. I don't think Hicks is going to be here. And so now you're going to have, between the two of them, there's like $35 million you're going to have right there.
Yeah.
So
quick question, just backtracking here. Tevin Jenkins was seen on the sidelines yesterday. Does that mean anything in terms of is he getting closer? I mean, of course he's getting closer to recovery, but does it mean that we may be seeing him soon in practice, given that he traveled with the team to Florida?
It's a good question. But then yesterday, Wilkerson came up with COVID yesterday morning.
Yep.
And they immediately brought up Hambright off the practice squad the same day yesterday because of COVID, which you're allowed to do, which tells me they're taking all the practice squad guys. Or not all of them, but they're taking guys. And, Tevin Jenkins, they got a second-round choice. They probably want him observing as much as they can so he can learn from the sidelines.
Gotcha. Getting back to the DBs, Chris wants your specific opinion about Eddie Jackson, who received some valid criticism from Sean Desai in Thursday's press conference regarding his tackling, but also spoke at length about the value that Eddie Jackson brings to the defense because of his knowledge of the different coverages, because offenses don't throw his way a lot because of his reputation. Your thoughts on Eddie Jackson?
No, I agree that you go back to his career at Alabama, he wasn't a strong tackler. He's no thumper. Never has been. In fact, he came into college as a corner and played corner, I think, the first 2 years of his career, then got moved to safety. So he's never going to be a thumper. No, he did, because now you're looking for it. He did lay some licks yesterday.
Yes, he did.
But you got to see more.
Yep.
I think his tweet picking on Lance Briggs was the stupidest thing he's done since he's been a Bear.
Yes.
I just said, my God, what is he thinking?
He wasn't thinking.
Don't piss off those guys because those guys got a voice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I got to actually go back and listen to what Briggs might have said in yesterday's show. It might be entertaining. What about Bilal Nichols? Last season, I thought he was on the cusp of stardom. To me, he's not having that good of a season, and he's thrown out for a stupid, unsportsmanlike conduct play. Your thoughts on Bilal Nichols?
I'm not worried about him. I think he's a strong player. I think he's drawing, especially when Akeem is not there. He's getting more attention from the offense because he can be a disruptor. I think all told, the defensive line isn't bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what did they have? One game with the full show in there? That's it.
It's just one. Yeah. Yep. Want to ask you about overall, this team is with the trade deadline on November 2nd, which is right before the game. Yeah. So it's before the Steelers game. So a week before the bye. If this team loses to San Francisco, do they then start thinking about a rebuilding and trading away some of the veteran players to teams who are hungry for veterans to help them in their playoff push and acquire draft capital, or what?
My answer is this isn't hockey, baseball, or basketball. The trade deadline in the NFL is basically a non-existent day. Okay, there's been a couple years when there's been some moves, but in most cases, you can count them on one hand. And very, very rarely is there anything big. Now, could you have a Deshaun Watson? Yeah, but don't forget, when you trade these guys, some of these guys, okay, you want to trade A-Rob. You got the rest of it, half of a $20 million contract there, or 18 million, whatever he's getting. So say 9 million or 10 million, the team's got to have that 10 million to pay him.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot of things that go into the equation when you're thinking about doing that. And then a team say, well, okay, I'm picking up $9 million. I'm not giving him much. And he's out of contract.
Right.
I might, so the rental thing, that works in baseball. Doesn't happen in the NFL.
Do you think that the Bears should be aggressive in trying to make some moves, even though, it's unlikely that anything significant will happen?
I don't know if I can answer that, because again, it's in order to do something, you've got to have somebody on the other end of the phone. And history says that doesn't happen. In all honesty, when I was working, we had trade deadline. It was like, oh, okay.
It's like another day. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened? Nothing.
That's right. So why even have a trade deadline? But that's a topic for another.
Well, yeah, I mean, because they have it, but
right.
The media tries to make something out of it.
Yeah,
they have for years. Oh, the trade deadline. It doesn't happen in the NFL. Now watch, this year there'll be 22 trades. But generally speaking, I mean, in hockey, baseball, you got 60 trades on trade deadline day.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And it's so difficult to acclimate a player to your system. So when you're trying to make trades, you almost are narrowing the field of, okay, this guy's familiar with the system we're running, so this would be a good a player to inquire about. And there's some limitations. It's not like in baseball where if you need a right fielder, you can look at all 31 other Major League Baseball teams to find that right fielder. In football, it's a little bit more narrow-minded. Am I right there?
Well, part of it again is okay, who are you going to trade? Okay, so the names would be Hakeem Hicks, A-Rob, guys like that, right?
Okay, right.
Both of them are coming out of contract.
Right.
Okay, so the team that's buying him, and in their case, renting him,
right?
What are they going to give? Are they going to give you fair value?
Right. They're going to give you a 6th or 7th round draft pick.
Well, yeah. First of all, they're only getting them for half a season.
Exactly.
Okay, and so they're not going to give you much. Where in the case of A-Rob, I'm not so sure about with Hicks, and I'm not taking anything away from his value, but fact of the matter is he's missed a lot of games in the last few years.
Right.
And he's getting to that age where that happens. But, A-Rob's going to give you something back in the compensatory market. Okay, if you lose him. Maybe as much as now, it's a formula that it's all your gains versus all your losses. So people are like, oh, they're getting a 3rd round pick for that. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's the sum of everything. It's the sum of of who you signed versus the sum of who you lost. And it's a very complicated formula that the league office comes up with. And in all honesty, there's a lot of people that have no idea how it really works. There's people in front offices that have no idea because the league doesn't tell you.
Yeah, that's
you got to kind of guess.
Yeah,
based on what's happened in previous years.
Yeah, but you make a hell of a point there, Greg. Is that you can almost bank that you're going to get more in the compensation after A-Rob is signed by another team next season than you are in trading him as a rental player for the last half of the season.
Right, but you don't get that compensation until the following year.
Okay.
Okay, you're not getting it this. In other words, if he signs in March with the Rams, you're not getting that draft pick in April.
Gotcha.
Because the other part of the equation is playtime. And then awards. If he does not play to the level of the contract or gets hurt, it's a wash. Tough shit. You lost him.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's happened in the past where a guy's gone somewhere else, got a big contract. You think you're going to get something back. You get nothing because he got hurt.
Last question regarding football, and then we want to close the show with a special note. But Sanders says, how about we just keep our draft picks and draft guys? And so that leads to the question, do you think that Ryan Pace has perhaps been too aggressive to move up to get his guys and lose necessary draft capital?
I understand the argument, so I'm going to answer it this way. Would you have rather not had Justin Fields on the team?
That's
because
one
there
that
is a quarterback. There's no quarterback in this coming draft,
right?
That really lights your fire,
right? That's one that you definitely make. But Anthony Miller, David Montgomery.
Montgomery was well worth the price. How he's played, I don't remember what they moved up in the third round. They didn't give up a whole lot.
Correct.
Okay. So Anthony Miller, I think they gave up a fourth to move up a little bit to get him. That one didn't work out. So you kind of, but and it remains to see what's going to happen with Justin Fields. But you got to make that trade. I mean, everybody thought the guy's going to be a good player, and I think he's going to be a hell of a player. I think he is the guy that the Chicago Bears want to be the future quarterback, but don't expect him to be an all-pro right now because it's not going to happen.
I hear you. Very great analysis. All right, we want to end the show with a special tribute to a very close friend of Greg Gabriel, who he lost this past week. Tell us about Paul and where'd you meet him? What was he like?
Oh God, we'd get we'd have the FCC after us.
Keep it clean.
Are these things?
No, they're not.
The FCC
they're not regulated by the government, so we're good there. Yeah. But they could be regulated by your wife, so be careful.
No. I met Paul. I played minor league football for 8 years after I got out of college. Paul was on that team. He's older than I was. He was already a veteran. And I played with him for 8 years. It turned out and became one of the best friends I've ever had in life. So I've known him. I was talking to his wife, on Friday after he passed. And, so it was 1974. So it's been 47 years. And, just love the guy. Toughest, meanest mother I have ever been around. But, here's how you describe it. He was in pharmaceutical sales. He was an executive, looked great in a suit and tie. But his other life, he was a member of the Sons of Anarchy.
Oh,
I mean, he was as a crazy, and that's why I loved him because he was famous in Buffalo, and everybody wanted to know what Paul thought because he'd let you know. You wouldn't like him because he was a diehard conservative.
Oh, I love conservatives. I love diehard conservatives. And I respect them, especially because most of them can kick my ass. So, I respect Paul.
But no, he just I don't know when the memorial service is. I'm still waiting to hear from his wife because he's already been cremated, and her and another friend of mine's wife are trying to get a nice place for a big reception, because Paul said, he didn't always make sense when he talked, but you had to know him, because then if you knew him, you got it. Like he called we had a group of people that we've hung together now for almost 50 years. And the one lady, Patty Dermasic, Patty had like 5 kids, and she was a tough mother. Very good mother, but very strict. And so Paul was trying to describe her one day, and he goes, "She's a Gestapo mother jumper." And you look and you go, "Huh? What's that?" But then you go, "Oh, I know it. It's just Paul." So you knew what he was saying, even though it didn't come out right.
That's hilarious. And you wrote on your tweet regarding Paul that he was the best fullback you had ever played with.
Well, it's been a while since I played football. Last year I played with 1981. I formation fullback, sometimes even split backfield fullback. You always had a fullback in the game. He wasn't a big guy. Probably 205, but back then, hell, I only played 185 to 190, 192. We didn't have size then. When I came into the league, a big offensive tackle was 275. That guy's a reject now. Okay, so it's an entirely different game. But Paul is just real tough, and he was. I don't think he could play by today's rules, because he'd take your knees out, he'd chop you, anything that he could do. And back then it was all fair.
Sure.
So, it wasn't against the rules, but he'd do it. And
oh my goodness, I've seen some of the old NFL films where they were basically assaulting players on the field, and then when they were injured, they were dragged out. They didn't bring a doctor out into the field; they just dragged you off the field.
Yeah, throw a Band-Aid on them and then put them back in.
Well,
I'm gonna miss him. I was kind of surprised. I didn't, he had dementia, came on suddenly. But he was 80 years old. I'm 70.
Yeah.
And well, how about this? And I think I might have told you, this guy was so competitive, great shape, played competitive rugby into his 60s, and was good at it. Went back to he went to East Tennessee State. Went back, and they used to have the alumni. The spring game was the alumni against the varsity. He went back. He's 45 years old, 46 years old, plays every snap.
Amazing.
And, unbelievable condition this guy was in. In the winter, he'd go skiing all over the world, not just the country. Any place he could find to go, him and his wife would go, and they'd go spend a week skiing somewhere. They go out to Colorado, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, wherever, and just have a blast.
Well, everyone in the chat room and myself are saying sorry for your loss. And Paul, this show is dedicated to you. And hopefully we're not back here next week reading the last rites of the Chicago Bears, because they could be headed that way if they lose another game. But we'll see. We'll be here next week to talk about that. And Greg, again, thanks very much. Make sure you follow Greg. Let me put your Twitter handle up there so that people can see it. It's at Greg Gabe, GregGabe. You want some entertaining tweets to read? Greg has them and more.
I've come down in my old age.
You have, but nonetheless, they're still very entertaining, and I think the word is prescient. So you say a lot of things that end up happening either later in the game or the next day or a month. Your insight into pro football is unbelievable, and I love just following your Twitter handle. In fact, one of the ways I prepare for this show is I just look down your Twitter. I want to talk to him about this. I want to talk to him about that, and so forth. And so we'll have a lot to talk about next week. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We got a lot more football stuff on the Barroom Network. The best way to stay on top of everything is to follow us here on the YouTube. Just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get updates on all of the work that we are doing. For Greg Gabriel, I'm Aldo Gandia. We'll see you next week.